I wanted this to be my new favorite camera. I really did. This is the Canon G7X Mark III. It is so small, it has a great lens, has a little flippy screen, and even has a mic jack too. It is almost perfect, and I gave it a fair chance, but I am returning it tomorrow. In this video, we'll look at why. Hi, I'm Aaron Parecki, and if you don't already know, I am a huge fan of tiny cameras. I like to travel light, I never check bags, so I need everything to fit just into my backpack. These little cameras are getting so good lately, and in many situations they do just as well as a much bigger camera. Plus, of course, the camera you use is the one you have with you. And I am sure a lot more likely to carry this around than a big DSLR rig and external microphone contraption. So why did I decide to return the Canon G7X Mark III? Well, there were a few critical flaws that were just a deal breaker for me. Now, I want to first say that it's possible that Canon will fix these with a firmware update. I feel like they're all rooted in software problems ultimately, so it's something they could fix in the future. But at the price of this, I'm not willing to just spend that money and cross my fingers. So let's look at the two main problems I have with this camera. First, as I'm sure you're familiar with by now, the autofocus in this camera isn't great. Now, the autofocus in the G7X Mark II wasn't great, but I was willing to accept that for a 3-year-old camera. I was hoping that the Mark III would be a significant improvement in the autofocus 3 years later. My last video compared the autofocus between the Mark II and the Mark III, and it's definitely not an improvement. It looks like it might even be worse than the two in some situations. And that's pretty disappointing. But like I said, maybe Canon will fix it in a firmware update. You never know. Okay, so if the autofocus in the Mark III is about the same as the Mark II, maybe there are some other features that can make up for it and still make it worth the upgrade. Well, I can say the stabilization in the Mark III is definitely an improvement over the Mark II. But the Mark II wasn't terrible at stabilizing either, so that alone is not enough of an upgrade to justify it. Now, the addition of the microphone jack is definitely fantastic though. That is definitely a significant upgrade, and it was actually one of the things I was most excited about this camera. Of course, at the end of the day, this camera is all about portability, and as soon as you have to attach an external microphone, it becomes a lot less likely that you're just gonna, pop it out and start filming on the go. So maybe it's not that important of a feature after all. But there is another problem that I haven't heard many people talking about, and I almost didn't notice it myself. I want to show you this first before we talk about it. Let's switch the camera into stills mode and try to take a picture. Did you see that? It happens really fast. Let's look again. Did you see that time? There's a little delay before the picture you just took shows up on the screen. And what's really weird is during that gap, it continues to show the live viewfinder. Okay, this may seem like a really minor thing, but as I was using this to take pictures, it turns out it's incredibly distracting. When your subject is like moving around, basically it means that the motion continues and then skips back in time to show the picture you just took. I'll show you with the moving subject. Watch this. Okay, so this just seemed really odd to me. I poked around in the settings, I tried to compare if it happens only when it's shooting RAW, maybe it takes some extra processing to do that or something. I switched it into just JPEG mode, same problem. It's always there. So I was wondering, does the Mark II also do this and I just never noticed? But check this out. The Mark II shows the photo instantly, just like you'd expect. And now you can really see the difference when you're shooting a moving subject. So what on earth did Canon do that made it this much worse? Okay, so I know this seems like a really minor thing, but it really is distracting when you're shooting pictures. The fact that it's actually a step down from the Mark II is kind of frustrating to me. So yes, the Mark III is an improvement. It has a microphone jack, it has better stabilization. But the autofocus is not better, and there's this weird delay in the shutter, and it's just not enough of an improvement to justify the cost. So that is why I'm returning it. Too many problems and not enough improvements. I have a couple other videos linked below about the Canon G7X Mark III, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.